Which is interesting because she's talking about the larger cultural context. That's another term we have, right? Context, that we might want to try to do a link to. But in Barbara's work, she talks about intent community participation. And what a number of her students and she have done, she's worked in Guatemala for 40 years, is studied children and parents where the parents have been to school a fair amount or not been to school a fair amount. And in the, let's call them traditional households, less or no schooling, the kids participate in a lot of what the adults do or kind of around, and they're very used to watching very carefully what the adults are doing on the expectation that they were going to have to be able to do that in the future. And they've done some interesting experiments comparing, setting up a situation where you have two kids and an experimenter. And one of the kids is told, go sit over there for a while, your turn is going to be next. Meantime, I'm going to work with, I want to show Ellen this stuff. So Ellen and I were working away and we learned how to do this little task. It isn't all that complicated, but you've got to watch to see how how it's done. And then the second kid is asked to do it. You take what's going on when the first kid is being taught by the adult, and what is the second kid doing? And if you see sort of recent migrant kids from poorly educated moms, they're over here, even if they're only 6 years old, right? They're over here, and they're actually watching very carefully what's going on. If you take the sort of standard La Jolla kid, and you put them in that situation, they're bouncing all over the place, trying to get attention to themselves. So what does that mean? It must mean that the kids come in having developed a cultural practice, a way of doing things, right? Where the expectation is that if the adults have got them there and haven't kicked them out to somewhere else, that probably they should be helping out where they can help out and learning how to do the next stage of things. And so it's not like an ability to observe. We all know how to observe, right, at some level. Maybe there's something like a special ability to observe. I wouldn't get into that. But there certainly is a predisposition to observe when you think you're going to be up next, as opposed to, that doesn't have anything to do with me. And there seem to be these assumptions or predispositions or dispositions that people will talk about. So you're inclined to interpret things in a particular way because there's almost like a scripted way you know you're going to get into it later versus, that's just what we do.
She also talked about the difference in cultures, in more indigenous cultures versus American culture, how the family structure was different, how in American culture we send our children off.
That's right, separation of adults.
Separation, and they're like in child care, and that they don't participate in everything the adults do.
Right.
As where the other cultures that she had observed, they were very much included in everything, and so that may have made a difference also.
That's
in
right.
How
right. So that so this is where like the social organization of your everyday activities is fundamentally different. The kids are around for a lot of stuff, and they have certain kinds of responsibilities, and they see that the older kids have more responsibilities than they do, and they want to be like the older kids. Obviously, we all want to be like the big kids, right? And at the same time, they know that they're going to be tested out a little bit there. So they're just more oriented to what it is that's going on. Whereas our kids are probably just left to go watch TV or whatever. So I don't want you breaking our dishes. And then you can get to be college age, and I encounter a number of you for whom relatively simple things around the house you don't really know how to do. I'm not nailing any one particular person, but I encounter it all the time, things that I just think are just like, should know how to do. I thought it was general knowledge. No, it's not. And so we're very extreme in this society in separating our kids early. Russian society did that during the Soviet period. I think probably still preschool education, the push for getting one teacher or two teachers with some larger number of kids. And so most of the people around you are the same age as you are, and one person's a lot older. In the overall world scene, speaking of weird people, that's weird.
that also kind of ties in also with one of the articles they were talking about the difference in cultures about separating children to sleep right away versus letting them.
There's another. So think about a society, and this is why the whole independent variable stuff when you're comparing a couple of cultures just drives you wiggy if you want to say what the causal factor is. Suppose you have a society that has formal schooling. Now, this class accepted, what is one of the expectations of formal schooling? When the class starts, everybody's sitting in their seat. That's at a particular time on a clock. That's not what time, that's not on a cloudy day that when it's this or when it's that. It's just like a particular time. Same thing for mom and dad going to work. They've got to be there at a particular time. They have to leave time to get there at a particular time. If they can't get to, the parents can't get any sleep. Natalia was just talking about her probably getting sleep. If the parents can't get any sleep, they're going to pressure the kids to like, it's your bedtime now. Whether you're asleep or not, go to bed. Because you're going to have to get up at a particular time. And those of you who have, I think, certainly anybody's read our textbook, very standard results of the differences in cultures where industrialized cultures, where there's usually schooling, where it's usually more high technology, is more run by the clock. And if it's more run by the clock, then that's going to have an influence on the kids and how you treat the kids. And how much separation, how much separation is there between kids and parents? So in the United States, 30 years ago, it was a scandal if parents had a 2-year-old sleeping in bed with them in the United States. A scandal. Oh my God, you'd probably lock up the parents for doing something like that, right? Most cultures in the world, the 2-year-olds are sleeping in bed with their parents, so what are you going to do? Send that little kid off somewhere else? Come on. You're just crazy.
Can we also make a concept on parenting? Because
sure you can.
In another class that I'm actually doing research on is breastfeeding,
yeah.
And there's like a lot of stuff on culture in breastfeeding. So.
Yeah, and that's again another. It's a really important topic, not just in and of itself, but because if you're think about what. Well, it's probably hard for you to think about. So I'll just that in the last 50 years, the changes in American society, in mainstream American society around breastfeeding. So when I, like 50 years ago, breastfeeding was very much reduced, lots and lots of use of Similac and various kinds of artificial milk for kids. And that is really, really handy if the moms are working. And if the moms are on a schedule. It's really handy. It also may go in a society where things have become very medicalized. There are lots of things that didn't used to be medicalized that become medicalized. That's the same thing with childbirth, right? So childbirth was hugely medicalized. And then, for example, when my children were, when 46 years ago, my daughter was born, actually she was born in a big amphitheater at Yale University because she was upside down and had a cord tied around her neck and all this kind of stuff. So she was a demonstration project for medical school students.